Whoa, that one wasn't tight at all. Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch. Earlier this year, we overheated the LR4 in a pretty significant fashion. By we, I mean me. The budget LR4 was the ride or die vehicle around here at the ranch. It did everything. It was the most useful Land Rover I have ever owned. We towed a bunch of other Land Rovers with it. We put 2,000 pounds in the back of it, but being I broke it, I replaced it with the L405 supercharged Range Rover and have been driving that ever since, and I love every minute of it. But man, there's just something about an LR4 that I miss, so it is time to get that guy back on the road, albeit it's gonna be in a little bit different fashion than it was before. But today is the long-awaited teardown of the 5-liter. We're gonna get the cylinder heads off and figure out just how much damage I did. So we obviously lifted the body off the chassis last video to give us a lot better access at that 5-liter V8. And with all that room, we can now start tearing it down and figure out exactly how much damage I did. We know at least that we hurt the head gaskets, but I'm truly afraid that we probably did much more damage. But what we're gonna do is get some more stuff out of the way. We're gonna start with the radiator, condenser, and everything on top of the valve covers. And then before we start tearing too deep in, I wanna pull the spark plugs so we can do a leak down test. And with this guy, we're going to pump compressed air into each cylinder and hopefully be able to pinpoint which cylinder or which cylinders, depending on how much damage I did, are the ones with the issues. That way when we tear something apart, we can have a better idea of where exactly we need to look for the damage. So let's start making a little more room. We made plenty of room last time by getting the body out of the way. But man, I'm actually excited to work on this thing with how much room there is for activities in here now. Got to remember that these fan clutches are reverse thread, unlike the original Rover V8 and like the D1s and D2s. So if you hit them thinking they're a normal thread, you're going to be hammering for quite a while. And like I mentioned last video, it's a good thing with the head gaskets being garbage. It emptied itself of all its coolant ahead of time. I'm gonna kind of get some of the wiring out of the way now. This can lay over the back. This guy can lay over here. We can splay this one out the back a little bit. All right, we'll get the last of the wiring laid behind the engine here. Get this last AC line out of the way. Get that breather hose off. Get the last of the vacuum lines off. All right, pretty much everything up top is out of the way. So we yank the coils out and get the plugs out and get our leak down test done. Then we can really tear into this thing. By the looks of it here, it's gonna come apart pretty quick, but when you don't have that around it, well, that one kind of threads like garbage all the way out. Along with this one, it's kind of an interesting thing. I'm curious to see if this front one is as well. Still. So these three have been an issue threading them out. This cylinder here, which I believe is cylinder number 4, is the one that kept chewing up or eating spark plugs. I guess that's not the right word, not eating, but fouling spark plugs out. Number 4 was the one I was suspecting that had the head gasket issue. And it could have been where this got super hot. And that could be why these 3 spark plugs don't want to come out. Now, none of these plugs have been in there all that long. I think I did them a few thousand miles ago. Now, being this is a direct injected vehicle with the fuel injectors, these guys there go right into the combustion chamber. So before we pull the injectors out, we do have to do our leak down test right now. And that's a good thing because I'm super curious how this is going to turn out. Order of operations. I forgot to get this guy to top dead center. And we just have an extension in there, and that'll top out. So right there. All right, now we can go back in. And I've gone over this before, but essentially what this guy does is we inject compressed air out of our air compressor directly into the cylinder. And this left-hand gauge will be our input from the compressor. Right-hand gauge will be how much pressure the cylinder is holding. So we're going to throw 100 psi in here, and our reading on the right hand gauge will show us how much leak down we have. So say we showed 90 psi, we have 10% cylinder leakage. That's usually about the acceptable max that you want. I have a feeling this may end up being quite a bit more in one of these cylinders, but I did leak this down when it started showing symptoms, and there was none that had abnormal leakage. So we don't know. The other nice thing about a leak down is, over say a compression tester, is this will allow you to pinpoint where the leakage is happening. If you hear air coming out of the throttle body, you have an intake valve leaking. If we hear it coming out of the exhaust, we have an exhaust valve leaking. We'll undo the oil cap. And if we have it coming out of the crankcase, it's leaking past the piston rings. And if we're pushing out one of the coolant ports, it's gonna be that head gasket. So if it's gonna leak, I'm assuming it's gonna be out of there. All right, so let's run through these real quick. Well, right off the bat, not looking good on cylinder 2. Like I told you, it may be worse than I think. So that had 80%, which is no good. All right, we'll do cylinder 4. Well, 4 is actually healthier. Got about 35% leakage. That leakage is coming out the same area as 2. We'll see how 6 is here. 80% leakage on that one. So that one's not healthy either. Sounds like it's coming from the same place as the other 2. I'm thinking this is gonna be our problem side here. Cylinder 8, and we got the same result. You see 100 psi on the left, 20, well 18 on the right. Means we got 82% leaking. Guess we'll move on to the other bank. Well, that's much better. We're at about 20% leakage. Not good, but not near as bad. Kind of suspecting what I feared. These things usually don't like being overheated to the extent that I overheated it. And I'll let you in on a little secret. Not only did I overheat it that original time, I overheated it again more recently when it really started having issues. Showing 42, so we got 58%. I mean, I guess at least if I was gonna junk it, we did it proper and across every single cylinder. At least so far. We got 2 left that could be good. Cylinder 5, 72, so 28%. Same noise. Last one, number 7. That's been about the best one yet. About 20%, which I mean still isn't acceptable. So not a single cylinder passed. It's not exactly great news. So you guys may be in for a little bit of carnage coming up when we get this guy apart. This has been less than ideal. We're gonna go ahead and get the valve covers off first, then we'll pull the front drive off and get the timing chains out of the way. Fuel line has to come off. Then we'll zip the fuel rail off. Losing the rest of our fuel. I would have thought more of that was gone. Then we have our special fuel injector puller. It's like a little slide hammer, and it just clamps onto the end of the injector. Theoretically, these guys should come right out, being I've had them out before for the timing chains. There we go. It's a lot of oil in there. Sure glad the body's out of the way. There we go. That's a lot of water. Load it up with water in there. Ah, dropped my bolts. Quicker than when it's all tucked away in the car. I mean, up top here, everything looks in order. I can assure you it's not, but it looks that way. Our timing chains are good, but they only have 10,000 miles, so they should be. But we are pretty clean. Inside of the engine still looks good. Not all coked up, but you can tell we kept up on our oil changes. We always did 6,000 miles. That still doesn't help when you overheat it though. All right, so we'll just get all the front stuff out of the way now. Good old stretch belt for the fan. Let's undo the pulley. Take that off. Get the water pump off. I thought I had that one undone. We're going to go ahead and get the intake manifold out of the way as well. Get our little Y pipe out of the way. Kind of crazy just how much quicker this is all coming apart. I mean, when you can just go after everything without crawling around, it makes a big difference. Now we get the fun job of taking the crankshaft bolt out. That guy is in there pretty tight. But one more benefit of having the radiator out of the way is we can get in there and see which bolt we have much easier. These 5 liters could come with 2 different bolts, and they are marked either 12.9 or 10.9. The 10.9 are regular thread bolts. The 12.9 are reverse thread. This one I know is a reverse thread. It's 12.9. In fact, I think pretty much all the ones I've ever done are 12.9s and reverse thread. So that means righty-loosey. Don't do it the other way, you can break it. There is also a special tool to lock everything down. We have that, but being we have everything out of the way, we're gonna use the impact to get it off. Because that's much quicker than setting the tool up. Now definitely don't use the impact to put the crankshaft bolt on. You definitely want to have the tool and torque it correctly. It's a lot of foot-pounds. But to pull it off, we're fine with the impact. Just a little plate, use that to push off the crank bolt, bolt it to the crank pulley itself. Just acts as a little puller. That's just for when I'm too lazy to get the actual tools out. And we get to take a peek at the timing chains, which have been in there, I don't know, 20-ish thousand miles. I'll have to actually look and see when we did them. Everything looks tidy. Still got our oil nozzle there and right there. Everything seems tight. Tensioners look all right. So at least that's in good shape. But there's the dreaded timing chains that everyone is terrified of. Like I said, we obviously did these 15, 20,000 miles ago. And right there, the updated guides and tensioners. The guide has a steel button now, and that really saves your bacon. But even though they're good, they need to come off. They don't look so scary this way, do they? So what we're gonna do is get the timing tensioners out of there, get the guides out of there, get the chains out of there. After the chains, we can get the camshafts out of the way. The head bolts are beneath the camshafts. I was trying to keep the cam gears on, just so we had less loose pieces as this is all sitting around, but we couldn't get away with getting the chain out around the tone ring. Those will have to come loose and everything when this goes back together to set the timing anyways, so not a big deal. We need to get this idler pulley bracket out of the way, oil filter out of the way, rear crossover out of the way, then we can start pulling the heads off. I'm gonna leave the exhaust manifolds on the heads, break it from the catalytic converter pipes. Those will be much easier to remove when the heads are on the bench. This is probably gonna make a little bit of a mess. There's always a little bit of oil left in there. This bracket has to come off because it bolts to both the block and the cylinder head. So it kind of would prevent the cylinder head from coming off because it'd still be attached to the block. Probably gonna break these. A little acetone and ATF here. Told you they were gonna break. That's a future Joe problem. Our aluminum crossover pipe seems to be holding up pretty good. Probably should have just replaced that sooner. The OEM plastic one that I should have replaced failed and kind of somewhat led to this mess. But like I said, I probably could have just not overheated it so bad and we wouldn't be in this mess. So we can't blame some inanimate object for my faults. We're starting with the passenger side here because I don't think this side is as bad as the driver's side. So I guess if this side looks bad, we're really in trouble over there. But we're gonna see the torque, about 110, 110, 109. That was 120, 125, 115, 110, 120, 120. All right, so that all seemed in order and consistent throughout. wants to pop off. Now we should be good. Well, I've seen better. Well, the pistons look to be in one piece at least, but we'll get this side off and we'll get both sides cleaned up. Now, like I said, this is a side I'm really worried about. About 100. About 100 as well. 90, 110, 105. Whoa, that one wasn't tight at all. That didn't even have enough to register on there. I'll have to check the camera. I don't think I did that one, but it feels like I did. About 100, 110. Now remember, these three plugs were the ones that would not thread out. That one's super loose too. That was 55. That was about 90. So that is super interesting. I was suspecting cylinder 4 was our issue. That was the one that was ruining spark plugs. And the head bolt in between 2 and 4 on the upper side didn't even register on the torque wrench, which means it was like less than 25, 30 foot-pounds. This one was like 55 pounds. The rest of them were in range, 90 to 110. It's never going to be super accurate when you're pulling them off with the torque wrench, but it gives you an idea. All right, let's get this guy. I should take all the bolts out first. I think we're gonna have to get everything cleaned up so we can actually see what's going on here. The stuff growing in there isn't good. I'll be honest though, I was kind of expecting something a little more obvious, but I think we can see some signs of things. We'll just have to get all the water and oil out of the way so we can take a closer look. We've definitely had some stuff sitting in the cylinder while it was parked. You can see it's kind of growing. This is the cylinder that was causing our issues running. It does look like we got some burn marks crossing between the two though there. So this is the passenger side that wasn't causing as many issues. If you look in between the cylinders there, the gasket looks relatively flat. We still have a little bit of the black gasket material present on there. And if we look at the one, this is cylinder 2, this is cylinder 4. It's kind of sprung there with most of the gasket material gone, and it looks like we got some burn marks. This would have been our bolt that was loose along with this one. Yeah, you can definitely see right there. All right, we'll get everything cleaned up. Got most of the old gasket material and carbon off. It is interesting though, on number 5, something did go through it at some point in time. We got some marks on the piston. Something was bouncing around a little bit. But then right here I noticed a little bit of a grind mark. Almost looks like from something like a little die grinder with a carbide burr. So we can definitely confirm that this thing's been apart. That wasn't done by me, and it wouldn't have been done by the factory. How do I always seem to get the ones that people have messed with? Or is it just the fact that everyone's been messed with? Outside of those two things, this bank looks good. The other pistons look pretty nice. I don't see anything super alarming other than that. That's probably been like that for a while. We could just kind of smooth out some of those little divots to make sure we don't have any hot spots. If we turn it over here, it does have a little bit of a nick in the cylinder, but that is above where the ring would seat anyways, so that wouldn't actually affect anything. We could just take a little file and knock that down. The oil pump still works, so that's nice. If we climb over to the driver's side, the one that had all the issues, we're not looking terrible. I wanted to get the gasket material off and make sure we didn't have anything torched in between the cylinders. There is a minor bit of like visual pitting right there that didn't come clean. We didn't go super aggressive on this just to get this clean. I didn't want to do my own machining. I didn't want to mess with the actual aluminum surface. Like I said, the cylinder walls, I've seen better, but I've seen worse. There's no ridges, no anything. It just doesn't have the best cross hatching in appearance anymore. I think I'm gonna get the machine shop's opinion on this guy. So the pitting that we have is towards the cylinder wall and away from the center ridge on the gasket. The gaskets kind of have this little ridge there, and you're gonna have most of your pressure right along either side of that ridge when everything is clamped down. At center, it's still got that line, but you can tell it just kind of roughed it up. I'm not an expert on that end of stuff, but this is my personal vehicle, and it is the budget LR4 by name. We have the Range Rover to rely on for most everything now. So I'm kind of on the fence of throwing a ton of money at rebuilding this. If we were to pull this out and go through and rebuild it, you kind of almost mechanically total an LR4 at that point. Parts, when we get down to bearings, rods, pistons, and everything like that, aren't the easiest things to find. If you've gone through these before, you kind of know that. A lot of the only actual like pistons and stuff available are out of China. Not saying that's a bad thing, but like you can't go to Land Rover and buy a new set of pistons, or at least you couldn't the last time I checked. Correct me if I'm wrong. And with none of the pistons being burnt up like I was kind of expecting, I just don't know exactly what to do. Like I said, I think I'm gonna get the machine shop's opinion on that. And speaking of the machine shop, we went ahead and just dunked our cylinder head, the driver's side one, into the parts washer to get it cleaned up so we could just get a better peek at everything that's going on. Everything up top looks in order. I didn't get too crazy cleaning this guy. We'll let the machine shop do that, but I did want to do the same thing as we did on the block and check out the area in between the combustion chambers and make sure it didn't get torched. So what can happen is when you have the head gasket fail in between the combustion, i.e. the explosion that happens inside the cylinder will go through, and if it's like a pinpoint thing, it can act like a torch and actually melt the aluminum. It doesn't appear to have done anything crazy, although I can almost 100% guarantee that this guy is going to have to get milled to some extent because I'm sure it is warped. And I'm sure of that because if you remember, a couple of the head bolts were almost finger tight. One of them didn't register, so it was sub 25 foot-pounds. One of them was 55 foot-pounds, and that was this one and this one, which would make sense because in between this one and this one is where our major damage was on the head gasket. So I'm sure at least this area where those two bolts were has some sort of warpage. We'll have the machine shop check the head, and our precision straight edge is on the FedEx truck right now, should be here today, and we'll check the block. If the block is warped, I'm gonna kind of consider this 5-liter junk. If it gets to that point, we'll probably set that to the side and keep that as a future rebuild, collect all the parts, more for like video purposes than anything, and I will probably just find an engine, maybe even a supercharged one, to just stab in here. That way we can just get the LR4 back on the road, because we have tons of stuff laying around that is more of a priority on, say, the customization side of things. So I really just want to have the LR4 back on the road versus tying it up and letting it sit for 6 months while we get everything sourced and machined. It's just not the quickest process, and it's out of our hands once we send it to the machine shop. Our local machine shop can get the cylinder head stuff done relatively quickly. If we're not in the Christmas season, it's usually less than a week turnaround. But when you're talking about the machining of an entire engine, it's usually months. And then we're also in Iowa, which is kind of in the heart of the dirt track world, and we are coming up on dirt track season, which means the machine shops are usually even busier because everyone's getting their $55,000, $60,000 late model motor built up. I guess what I'm saying is I really wish I had dirt track racing money. Instead, I just have a bunch of old broken Land Rover type of money. There's worse things in life though. We just dropped off the cylinder heads from TFL's Discovery to get those checked out and gone through. So once those are done, we'll flop them out with these, get an opinion on the block. But that's not gonna stop progress on the LR4 because the next step is gonna involve a little bit of action with this guy. With that being said, appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you subscribing, and we will catch you on the next one. It's gonna involve a little bit of this. Suppose I should probably go buy some more totes to organize everything first though. Can't have all this laying out. Could get messy around here.